Good evening. Welcome to the Walnut Creek City Council City Regular Meeting. Before we start the meeting, I am going to read a little preamble here. Welcome to our meeting of the Walnut Creek City Council. The City Council is conducting this meeting from the City Council chamber. This meeting is also being video streamed and can be viewed live or later on the city's website. As some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek City Council meeting, I wanted to welcome everyone and talk briefly about the public comment process. For each agenda item, there will be an opportunity for the public to comment on that item. Thus, if you desire to speak to an item on the agenda this evening, please hold your comments until the City Council considers that item. Additionally, we have a section on the agenda entitled Public Communications, which is for public comments for items not on the agenda. Any comments during public communications should not relate to an item that is on the agenda for the evening. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be initially allocated for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the open session portion of the meeting if necessary. If you desire to provide the public comment, please complete a speaker identification card and line up behind the lectern at the appropriate time. Wait your turn, and then when you approach the lectern, please state your name and city of residence for the record. You will have 2 minutes to address the City Council. Please keep in mind that this is a city business meeting. The City Council has adopted rules of decorum to ensure that the meetings are conducted effectively and efficiently, and that all members of the public have a full, fair, and equal opportunity to be heard. The City Council Handbook outlines decorum expected in the City Council chamber and can be found on our website. All comments should be addressed to the City Council. Please do not use any threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meeting. Again, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. Written comments submitted and received up to 2 hours before the meeting have been posted to the website for public review and are included in the meeting record, but will not be read separately. That being stated, may we all stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Francois.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Councilmember Wilk.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Here.
Mayor Haskew.
I am here as well. Okay, next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull an item? Seeing none, does any person in the audience want to make a public comment on anything that is in the consent calendar? Again, I see nobody making a move. May I have a...
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right. Now, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
We're now public communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the council cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be allocated at this time for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the meeting. Would anybody like to come up and make a public comment?
Good evening, Mayor Haskell, City Council members, and staff. My name is Ellen Osmundson. I'm a Walnut Creek resident. And this evening, I would like to share with you some exciting news about the Walnut Creek Village. The Walnut Creek Village is a part of the national grassroots movement to reimagine aging and provide a platform for seniors to connect and continue to find meaning and purpose in life as they continue to age in their own homes. Our mission is that Walnut Creek Village will build an active community among seniors to promote social connections, support independence, engage volunteerism, and continue growth through education. We would like to provide opportunities for seniors in Walnut Creek Village to continue to make friends, learn and explore their hidden talents, keep healthy with movements and exercise, know who to call when help is needed, stay informed in community affairs, and volunteer when possible and appropriate to feel useful. We are currently in the pre-launch stage. Our first pre-launch event is coming up on Friday, November the 22nd, and we call it Smell the Roses Walk. We are pleased that Mayor Haskell and City Council member Kevin Wilk are going to join us, and we appreciate that. And it is going to be held at, we are going to start walking at Sports Basement, and we'll walk to the Rose Garden at Head Farms Park. We'll start at 11. For those who would like to join us, scan the QR code here. And we have also scheduled a pre-launch reception to officially introduce the Walnut Creek Village to the community. And it will be held on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. And of course, they would like to invite the entire City Council to join us at that time. And it will be held at the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. Okay, more information to follow, and thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ellen, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I noticed you referenced the QR codes. For those at home that aren't seeing the QR code, is there a website that someone could go to find out more information?
We do not have a website yet currently, but to find out more information, we have a Facebook group page that you can find us. Our group is called Walnut Creek Village Pre-Launch, and we have a lot of information there.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that for the community.
Good evening. My name is Marty Valuva, and I'm also a resident from Walnut Creek, and I'm here also tonight to talk to you about the Walnut Creek Village. The Village movement is nationwide with 25 villages in the Bay Area, including Sausalito, La Miranda, Clayton, Berkeley, Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Benicia. I attended a two-day California Village Conference in La Jolla in September, and here are some of the things that the other villages are doing to provide social connections and access to resources and volunteers that help seniors stay in their homes and avoid isolation and loneliness. Ashby Village is gathering stories from their seniors to preserve history, which they call kitchen table conversations. There are buddy walking teams. Santa Cruz has bocce ball. One village provides drive-by cupcakes delivered to their members on their birthday. Another village calls each member quarterly to ask if the village is meeting their needs and what could they do for them. Clayton Village has a men's group with outings to Mayor Island, Travis Air Force Base, and car shows. Lastly, Marin Village partners with their fire department emergency services. Villages provide support to seniors for health and safety, transportation, community engagement, and social well-being, far beyond what a retirement community like Rossmore or a senior center or senior classes can provide. As we age, we lose friends and loved ones, and seniors move away from their homes. We lose mobility. Some of us lose the ability to drive, and this leads to depression and loneliness. Villages are a very effective model to address these needs. Let's work together and join the 25 other Bay Area villages to build and grow the Walnut Creek Village. Thank you.
Hello, I am Donna Labriola. I'm with the Walnut Creek Downtown Association, and I live in Benicia. Tonight, I just wanted to come. We've given you each an overview of Oktoberfest. We didn't have a chance earlier to give you the details and wanted to do that tonight. First off, thank you so much for your support of the organization and for our events. So Oktoberfest was held on September 27th and 28th. This year we had over 20,000 attendees, which is a huge increase from last year, about 64% increased. We had 95 vendors in Civic Park East. We had over 850 Kid Zone passes that were sold this year. That's a 70% increase from last year. So the Kid Zone is really going at it. And we increased our income by 74.6% this year, so huge, huge jump. A little bit of the marketing overview. We had 53,256 visitors to the webpage to find out about Oktoberfest. We had a 52.2% open rate of our dedicated emails for Oktoberfest, which is also a very good number. We had 1.2 million impressions of our patch ad, which is also a really great number, which shows in the number of attendees that came out this year. We increased our sponsorship dollars by 47% to $54,200. Our entertainment, we had 2 stages this year. One was a community stage where we had 18 performances from community-based organizations, and we had 5 bands on the main stage, 2 of which were Oktoberfest music centered. Sorry. And finally, we had over 200 volunteers that came out and filled 430 volunteer shifts. So thank you again to the council and to the community for coming out and supporting our events.
I think there are some council comments.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this overview. We got this at the Walnut Creek Downtown Board meeting the other day, and we're really proud of how hard Walnut Creek Downtown to pull off something, in spite of the fact that it was stifling hot when I was working in the ticket booth. But I really liked the community stage and then the chill zone. I think those were both unique. The chill zone was there last year, but the community stage really brought out a lot of, I saw little Taekwondo kids and all kinds of things from my place over at the ticket booth. So thank you guys for a good job, and a good job really increasing the reach of the event.
Great, thanks.
And thank you to the work that Walnut Creek Downtown does. And maybe we could work in something about the
The ice rink.
Yes.
Yes, so.
They're going to be such an, what are the rules?
The ice rink is being set up right now and will open on Friday, the 22nd. We also are doing a tree lighting ceremony in Civic Park. We'll have the Northgate a cappella group out to sing some songs, and most of the city council will be out, and a lot of the community will come out to support that. And free hot chocolate.
And what date is that?
That's Friday, November 22nd, sorry. Any Friday, pick a Friday.
And it,
From 5:30 to 6:30.
and
Thank you.
is there a rain plan since?
There is a rain plan, and that we're going to make a decision on the rain plan tomorrow. And so if we do have to reschedule it, we are going to push it to Tuesday, which seems to be the day where we'll have less rain. The atmospheric river will have run its course, hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, hopefully
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
So tomorrow we'll make that decision and then send out a lot of social media and emails to everyone.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
I was going to promote the tree lighting and the ice rink as well. Thank you, Mayor. And is there any kind of, does the downtown, Walnut Creek downtown, have any insights into why the dramatic increase in attendance? Was it the timing, or holding it earlier, some of the events that were held, or?
I do think we benefited from having it a little earlier this year, and we have scheduled already and are holding our date for Civic Park for September 26th and 27th for 2025. So I think it made a, definitely made a difference.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you. All right, thanks.
No. Any other people want to brave the standing up in front of the council? Looks like it's not going to happen. All right, then we're going to move on to the next item. That will be council member staff announcements and reports on activities or requests. City Attorney, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There were 3 closed sessions this evening. The council provided direction on all 3 of those items, and there was no reportable, well, there was 1 reportable action. By a 5-0 vote, the council did authorize the city to resolve an insurance claim that the city has against one of its insurance companies. There is no other reportable actions.
Thank you. City Manager.
Yeah, good evening. Dan Buckshire, City Manager, and I am going to do one of our mayor's favorite things to do, which is to brag about Walnut Creek with 2 updates here this evening. The first is related to the election, and I wanted to speak about the process and the role that we played here in the city. We have 2 drop boxes here at City Hall, one on Main Street and one behind off of Broadway, and we had the most ballots dropped off of any location throughout Contra Costa County. I believe there were approximately 20 different locations, give or take. We had over 10,600 ballots dropped off, and that was the most out of any site, and that's been the case for a few different election cycles now that Walnut Creek has had the highest number dropped off. So thank you for everybody for turning in their ballots. And then secondly, City Hall was also a location for early voting for the few days leading up to the election day. In fact, this council chamber was the site, and we had a tremendous amount of turnout. If anybody was here, you know that we had lines out the door. And as a result, I also want to thank our clerk team here, our city clerk team, as well as some of our communications team who helped shepherd and manage that process, was in touch with the county clerk registrar of voters to help ensure that we could move things along and get as many folks through the process as possible to support a positive election in terms of participation. With that in mind, voter turnout was 72%, at least at this point in time in Walnut Creek. This is a relatively high number, and congratulations to all the winners in the election locally and otherwise. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, the other bragging point, is we did receive another award here in Walnut Creek, which is the Beacon Award related to sustainability. You know, I guess because it's sustainable, it's small in wood, so it really doesn't look that impressive, but it is a really nice achievement here. Maybe we have to enlarge it or something, I don't know. But I wanted to speak to this for just a moment about the award. So the Institute for Local Government selected Walnut Creek as one of the Beacon Spotlight Award winners. For the past 14 years, the program has encouraged, supported, and recognized voluntary action by local governments throughout California to address climate change, promote energy innovation, and create more sustainable communities. And this year, Walnut Creek received the Platinum Recognition Award. That is actually the highest level honor for sustainability practices, and Walnut Creek was able to demonstrate 66 best practices across 11 different sustainability categories, and this was effectively done by the city's longstanding commitment to sustainability and to new programs undertaken since the adoption of the updated sustainability plan that occurred in 2023. Some of the best practices include what we're doing at Heather Farm Park with the new design of the new facility, broad outreach to the community, as well as updating many of our buildings and implementing various efficiency measures. So thank you to everybody who's been involved in our sustainability program, both in the present as well as in the past, because we have received this award in prior years. And that's my update, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I like it when other people brag about our community. Can we start with Matt Francois, because that's as far as I can see.
Yes, you can. Good evening, Mayor. So we had a busy few weeks since our last meeting. I did attend, as a liaison to the chamber, I attended their board meeting on October 17th. Thanks to the city manager, provided a good update in terms of what the city's been up to. Got updates from Walnut Creek downtown. The chamber has solidified some of their plans for the women's conference which will be on May 4th of next year. It will be again hosted in downtown Walnut Creek here at the Lesher Center. And some of the keynote speakers, I believe, have been announced, unless Bob Linscheid tells me not to say them, are Anastasia Makova, who is a French, Ukrainian-born film director and journalist. Oh, and I apologize. The date was March 4th. I think I said March 5th. So I knew one of my colleagues would, in a friendly manner, tell me that it was March 4th and correct me. Yes. Yes. Okay, so I got distracted. Anastasia Makova, who is a French, Ukrainian-born film director and journalist. Broadway legends, Sandra Joseph and Ron Bomer. And Rachel Wilson, who's head of cybersecurity at Morgan Stanley. So it seems like it's set up to be another very successful women's conference, again, hosted right here in downtown Walnut Creek on March 4th. 2025. And then this Thursday, and I'll report on this at my next council meeting, we'll have a board, the chamber is having a board planning meeting in the afternoon. I believe our city manager and assistant city manager will be in attendance as well. So I'll give you an update there. On October 23rd, I attended the Recycle Smart board meeting, and as you'll recall from some of my past updates, we're in the process of going through the RFP process and awarding contracts for our collection and post-collection services. So we did have a milestone on the 23rd, and the board voted unanimously to recommend awarding post-collection contracts. And I won't go through the whole list, but there will be familiar names because some of them are our current providers, but rest assured that we went through a competitive process and came to the conclusion that these providers are providing the most cost-effective, competitive services in a high result-oriented manner for all of our constituents. So the landfill disposal will continue to happen at the Keller landfill facility, which is operated by Republic. The processing of recyclable materials will continue to be done by Mount Diablo Resource Recovery, as will the transfer of solid waste and commingled organic materials. So once we got that big check mark next to the post-collection contract, we issued an RFP for collection contract services. So expect more updates as we move forward with the collection services. And I'm told by our Recycle Smart staff that we've already received something like eight or so interested parties have come to a meeting with staff to express their interest. So it looks like there will be a competitive process for the collection services too, which is exactly why the board voted to go through this process. Let's see, on November 6th, I had the pleasure of attending the Citizens Institute, and I just am so pleased that that is back and operational. This is a program that the city had put on annually prior to COVID, and it gives residents an opportunity to see how the city works firsthand behind the scenes. They tour each of the departments, and they get an update from each department head. They also go on a bus tour of their neighborhoods. I believe Councilmember Silva attended that event. There were at least 35 or 40 people in attendance, kind of on a cold November night, the day after the election. It was really great to see that many people engaged kind of in the city and wanting to learn, genuinely interested in learning about the city. And there was a fantastic job done at the Courtyard by Rich Payne, our Public Works Director, and all of our great Public Works staff. Along with all my colleagues, I attended the Veterans Day Memorial. I'm going to let the mayor speak to that, but I would just like to thank her for including all of us in the presentation. I think it made it very personal and meaningful for me, so thank you for doing that. And then, along with Councilmember Wilk and Mayor Pro Tem Darling, it was fun to attend the grand opening of Pinstripes at the former Crate and Barrel facility. It's a really fun new venue that I think is going to do extremely well in Walnut Creek, with indoor bowling and bocce and great food and a full-serve bar. So looking forward to having more family and fun events planned there in the future. And that is my update.
It was happy. Kevin, please.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot happened over the last month. I also had a Citizens Institute opportunity for the Lesher Center, and the class gets to go backstage of the Lesher Center and see how all the magic works. But this is a great program, and next year when it's offered again, I hope that we get another many dozens of applications, because nobody ever leaves feeling like they didn't learn a lot about how the city operates. Again, Mayor, thank you for the Veterans Day ceremony. I heard lots of comments afterwards about how enjoyable it is to honor our veterans, and that just Walnut Creek does a terrific job annually. So let you talk more about that. But again, thank you. Pinstripes was great. There was another grand opening just the day before, and that was Model Bakery, which both of those were long time waiting to be opened, and terrific coming out for so many people that came to see it, as well as the staffs, and we look forward to very long tenures for both of them. There was also actually a ribbon cutting for Locust Street, because all of that utility work and the public works that did everything on the sidewalks and the road work is done. And so we can look forward to ideally getting more outdoor dining, and Locust Street continues to be open for business, so that was great to be involved with as well. I wanted to lastly mention that Mayor Pro Tem Darling, I think you and I were the only ones there in Rossmore. There was Coffee with a Cup, which we've seen before in Starbucks and a few local locations, where there'll be, a dozen, maybe 15, 20 people from the community out to talk about safety and what's happening in Walnut Creek. There must have been 100 people at Rossmore. Between safety, and I see some of our officers in the back, and thank you very much, Chief and Captain Brown and Lieutenant Slater. It was phenomenal, because being the liaison for Rossmore over the last year and being involved with so many different parts of what they're doing, safety is a huge factor for them. Concern, and there's so many different issues, but fraud is as well, and we don't hear about that as much. So I heard a lot of feedback that really appreciated our department being able to work closely with Rossmore with their security. And again, as the title was, Coffee with a Lot of Cops. And it was great. So thank you very much. I look forward to this being an annual event. No doubt Rossmore would really appreciate that. As liaison and sitting on the County Connection Board, and this year I'm actually chairman of the board of County Connection, a lot of updates there. And it's kind of a good news, bad news scenario on a few of these. I'll start with a bad news, and that is an electric bus update. So Walnut Creek and County Connection was very proud in being an early adopter when it came to electric bus and manufacturing for that, and being the first in the manufacturing company, Gillig, in the entire country. And we still have the only 2 electric bus routes are in Walnut Creek for County Connection. But there's problems, and anybody that's been part of early adopting, there are problems when it comes to early adopting manufacturers and subcontractors, and this is one of them. The wave electric and induction connectors are not speaking with our batteries on the buses. I don't understand all the technology behind this, but evidently there's been some problems there. There's also problems with the company itself that's being used. We are not alone. There are other bus companies throughout the state and country that are also having trouble since they've been early adopters. And so some of the parts aren't even manufactured anymore. So these sub-manufacturers are running into problems all over the country. We're on it. And we currently have about a dozen buses that can't operate right now, that are sitting in the county courtyard just waiting to be charged. And we can't just charge them there and then let them go on the route because they'd run out of juice and then we wouldn't be able to get them back. So we're looking at this as the #1 issue right now in County Connection. It's why if you've been downtown, you've seen the Route 4 going by, why don't we have the trolleys running, the electric trolleys, and we've got the big buses? That's why. So I'll continue to give updates on that just as we get updates at County Connection. A good news is there is an administration building at County Connection, and it has been renamed now the Schroeder Family Administration Building. For those longtime residents in Walnut Creek and in the county, the Schroeder family is well known in transportation throughout Walnut Creek and the county. Bob Schroeder was a former Walnut Creek mayor. He was also a former county supervisor, very involved with the Central Contra Costa County Transportation Authority. And his son, Rob Schroeder, was a 25 or 26-year mayor of Martinez and on the county board connection for many, many years. And so the administration building will be named for the family. Bad news. People might have heard about the fiscal cliff when it comes to BART and transit within the Bay Area. And there was we're talking now throughout all of the transit companies of how to resolve the emergency situation between BART and SFMTA, Caltrain, MTC. Will it involve parcel tax, payroll tax, sales tax? It's still being worked out through the 4-county solution, which includes Contra Costa, Alameda, San Mateo, and Santa Clara. A lot more to come on this. You're going to be hearing a lot of this in the media, too, as it continues to be discussed. But this is a big issue, and all the transit agencies are involved in it. But to end that portion of it with good news, County Connection got a $16 million grant for a solar array in the in the County Connection bus yard for battery backup storage facility, which will integrate with the zero-emission bus systems and modernize its fleet with 27 zero-emission buses to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now, that's ironic based upon what we just talked about when it came to the charging systems, but that was a huge win in getting that $16 million grant. So we look forward to getting past this issue when it comes to the charging. And the last point in my brief report is the Family Justice Center will be opening up their 4th office in Contra Costa County. The Family Justice Center works with underprivileged families, immigrant families, domestic abuse issues that have happened, and really helps these people that may not have a path of how to get the help that they so need throughout the county, and it really provides them with those resources. So it's supported by all of our government up and down, but it's a nonprofit. And so we were looking forward to opening this 4th, called the South County office. It will be in Danville. It opens on December 10th in cooperation with Supervisor Candace Anderson's office. And we look forward to that opening. And I am a representative for the Family Justice Center from the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference. So more on that to come as well. And that's my report.
Mostly happy news. Yes, next.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And a few things of note. The East Bay Regional Communications System Authority, which basically operates the 2-county public safety radio system, is very deep into really assessing our finances for the long term going forward, particularly since we're switching systems and technologies. Tonight on the council consent agenda, the last item was approving the receipt of a nearly $1 million grant from the Department of Justice COPS program for us to be able to upgrade our technology for the radio systems. And this is happening in the 43 agencies across the 2 counties as well. So we're looking at how we can actually establish a capital equipment reserves fund, because these things will continue to happen, not only with the radios, but the towers and the centralized equipment that operates the system, because we want to be sure that system is operating well. So over the next few months, we'll be looking seriously at that. I continue, as of the annual conference for the League of California Cities, I continue to serve on the board of directors, and the board over the next 2 weeks will be gathering input and consolidating the input from across the state, from all city councils and staffs, on what we should be prioritizing at the state level as an association, and we will finalize that in the next 2 weeks, those priorities for the coming year. We will also have a discussion on how things turned out at the state level in terms of propositions and other initiatives and elections that occurred. Congratulations, by the way, to my 2 colleagues for your reelection, and to all the others in the local level and at the regional level who were elected on November 5th. I also want to congratulate staff for all the work you did over the last 2.5 years, I think it was, to get Locust Street refurbished. It wasn't really your work. A lot of it was the work of East Bay Mud, the Water District, as well as Central Sanitary District. But you had to navigate and chart that course and manage those 2 agencies and their work, and then do improvements afterward. And even though I was away and in another country, I saw a photo of a piano keyboard painted across Locust Street. So something tells me somebody on Rich's team was out with a paintbrush some night. And I did have the opportunity to participate on Saturday, October 19th in the Citizens Institute, and I helped to orchestrate with our Assistant City Manager and Liz Payne, our communications person, to help coordinate the bus tour. And we had enough people on the bus to actually have a tour of the whole city. We were in all parts of town, and we had time to visit some other sites, not just people's neighborhoods, Heather Farm Park, the gardens at Heather Farm, and other highlights. But the most important thing I learned was to really admire the tenacity of tour guides on buses who have to talk and not fall over at the same time. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody else seems to have this really happy, fluffy time with the Citizens Institute. Well, I got the night they were doing Community Development Department, and they were grilling me. Those people already know about the Builder's Remedy. When are we going to have Firewise communities? They had some questions for me. They were not all
I
sweetness and
sent
light.
it to them.
I figured there
On the
was,
bus.
it's like, okay, there's something going on there. Also, when we were down at Cal Cities, I might just be the mayor next year, so I did attend the training on how to deal with a difficult audience. And one of the things, I am very proud of our city, sitting up there with council members from other cities and hearing the horror stories that they have about how their councils fighting each other, how their people. There was one woman who said that they had not been able to get through an entire council meeting for 2 years without having to take at least a 5-minute break to let things calm down. And I just want to say, I was proud of our city. I was like, oh my God, what are you guys dealing with? So that was fun. MCE, we had the retreat for the entire board where we walked through our, we're at a point with electricity in California. The transition to sustainability is challenging. The costs are high. The PG&E is continually increasing their share of the rate that we charged. But we did get to go see some happy joy things. We went out to the Richmond schools on an electric bus that is capable of being recharged. There's an electric school bus in Richmond. And then we got to see the Richmond schools have installed battery storage. They've installed windmills that are a different type of windmill. They're not the kind that chop up birds this way. They spin this way. So there was really interesting to see that. And then we got to go see one of the newer battery installations. One of the things that people are starting to realize when they first started to do large-scale industrial batteries, they were partnering them with solar farms. And now they've realized, well, that doesn't need to be. And so this is one really close to a big PG&E substation. And it had just a tremendous amount of battery capacity, and it was up and running. And some of those are the reasons we did not have brownouts this summer. So that was good to see. Let's see. I did get to go to the Trinity Center fundraiser. They have their fall fundraiser on Saturday night. For those of you who don't know, Trinity Center has been seeing an uptick in clients coming because of the displacement from other cities. And I really wanted to give a shout out to the police department. They have stepped up and worked with Trinity Center to help them keep that center operating in a way that's safe. It was great to see the community come out in support of Trinity, and they raised a fair amount of money. I'm not going to, let's see, the other really fun ribbon cutting was Holly's Homegrown and SIP Goods, and that's a pop-up there on Main Street, and it's just like, if you need to find something unique for somebody for Christmas or Christmas stockings, it's really cool stuff. They had lost their lease in Lafayette, and Brian Hirahara says it saved him on Valentine's Day numerous times, and so he talked them into coming to Walnut Creek as a pop-up. So go support them because we need to keep Brian happy. And then last but not least, Visit Walnut Creek had their Calipolitan. This is one of those like tough things that you have to do every now and then. So I got together with Brian Hirahara and Barney Fonzie and Tracy Dietland from Broadway Plaza and Boozy, who is an Instagram influencer. And we tested the Calipolitan cocktails. And we picked the Calipolitan cocktail that was made by the bartender from Tiki Tom's. It was just a fabulous drink. It had like olive oil on it. It was really weird, but it was really, really tasty. And
Samples?
we drank them all. There are no samples here. And last but not least, I did go to the trunk or treat put together by our Arts and Rec program, and that was just fabulous. The partnership that got together to make that safe. I saw the CERT volunteers helping kids across the street with the flags. I saw people everywhere. And I saw that I was there for the quiet hour at the beginning where they had less of the big boisterousness for the kids who are a little bit more noise sensitive, or the mayor pro tems who are a little more voice sensitive. So I really want to give a huge shout out for the Arts and Rec staff. That was a great event. And that is it for me. I have a bunch of other things, but we'll talk about it later.
Okay. So I got appointed to the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and we had a retreat where we're looking at potentially in about 5 or 6 years having to renew our right to sales tax. And we've tried to go to the population for 2 times and not had any success. So they're trying to come up a way to let people know what they are and how much they do and how it improves their lives. Contra Costa Transportation Authority is marquee job was putting the extra bore at the Caldecott. Thank you. And so we don't have anything that's as impressive as that, but we still do amazing work, and so we're trying to let people know about that. I also, during all of the hubbub with the voters here, had a Cub Scout group come and learn about government, and it was ideal because we could walk in and watch the voters actually voting. That was pretty exciting for them. A number of people mentioned Veterans Day, and I want to thank especially my friend Betsy Burkhart because she did a fantastic job of helping out and planning and marshaling people. And one of the things that we had as part of that was from Joybound, the group that took over ARF, and they had a soldier who had attended this no-cost services for people with veterans, and the veteran was as nervous as somebody could stand and still do a job about telling us how important it was to have this amazing dog come and live with him and make him more able to deal with the public and just day-to-day life. It was very, very impressive. Let's see. We did, 4 of us were down at 5 if you count the 6 if you count everybody from here. We were down at the League of Cities Conference, and we all kind of set out to find our thing that we wanted to focus on. And I actually attended a thing on the new housing rules, and it was they figured it out as like a Jeopardy challenge and threw candy at you if you got the answer right. The next time, Transpac, which is my lead into Contra Costa Transportation Authority, the local regional team, had a presentation about the new Naval's Weapons Station development, and the developer came along with somebody from Concord and was and did a deep dive into what the plans are to see what's going to have out there. And then I chaired the mayor's conference, and magically enough, they showed up again, and I got to hear the whole thing 2 times in a row on the same day. It was hard to stay awake. This very afternoon, 48 young people from Kita, Japan, who have an agreement with Seven Hills School, came and learned about Walnut Creek, and it was amazing. It is not easy to make a speech that has to be translated while you are making the speech. So we managed to figure out how to ask and answer questions and had a really, really good time. And finally, I did a whole day at CalCog in Sacramento. CalCog is a regional, an organization that represents regional organizations. And they're doing work with trying to think about laws to improve our consistency on the housing elements, and also to work together and have the VMT, the voter vehicle miles traveled, new rules blend in with the RENA numbers, so that we all can manage to stay lively with the state laws that change daily. So that's about it for me, and we're ready to move on to the next item. So that is a consideration item, a discussion of project labor agreements and related potential options regarding the Heather Farm Park Aquatics and Community Center project. Hi.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. My name is Carla Hansen. I'm the Deputy City Manager. As the Mayor mentioned, the item before you this evening is a discussion on project labor agreements as they relate to the Heather Farm Community Center and Aquatics project. The recommended action before you this evening is to receive the report and provide direction to staff if so desired. My presentation to you this evening will be broken up into 3 parts. Walnut Creek has not engaged with a PLA in the past, so we're going to talk about what is a PLA, how is it structured, what does it do, what are the common potential positive impacts and common potential negative impacts. Then we'll get into how might a PLA affect the Heather Farm Aquatic and Community Center project. And then we'll talk about some options for you all to consider this evening. So jumping right in, PLA is a specialized type of labor agreement covering project construction. Essentially, a project PLA is a agreement between key stakeholders on a construction project. Entities involved in PLAs are an owner, which is a city, a county, a district, a private company, construction trade unions or a local building trades council, and then contractors. PLAs have been in effect for a long time. They were used a lot in the 1930s when the federal government was trying to hire a lot of workers, and when there was a lot of work stoppages and issues with keeping workers on jobs. Work stoppages aren't as common now in the modern times, but PLAs are still an agreement that is used on projects. They're most beneficial on private projects because public entities are required to pay prevailing wage on all construction projects. And what prevailing wage means is that all workers on public projects are paid the same prevailing wage that's determined by the Department of Industrial Relations. And it's really, they're paid on the type of work and the work location. And the prevailing wage rates are usually based on the rates specified in collective bargaining units, so union wage rates. The main terms in a PLA, and really the bargain here, is the city or an owner receives possible advancement of labor peace and project support and advancement of workforce goals, and the unions receive broad application of terms outlined in their collective bargaining agreements. So how do they work? So an owner or a city enters into a PLA for either a single large project, like the Heather Farm Aquatics Community Center project, or a set of projects. A trades council and individual unions sign the PLA, and then the city requires a prime contractor to sign the PLA and insert it into the bidding specification, so everyone who's bidding on the job knows that they have to comply with the PLA. The PLA cannot preclude non-union contractors from bidding on a job, and the prime contractor will require subcontractors to sign the terms of the PLA as well. And the terms of the PLA apply to both union and non-union contractors equally. And folks who are signing on to the PLA, their workers will also have to comply with all of the aspects of the PLA as well, including union dues and things like that. So what is included in a regular type of PLA? So I'm going to talk about the basic terms, and then I'm going to talk about what are common negotiated terms. The basic terms really are a no strikes agreement. So unions are not allowed to strike or take collective action against the contractors or the project. And then there's a compliance with all trade agreements. So that's that any contractor working on the project must abide by the terms of the relevant trade collecting bargaining agreement. All hiring comes from the union hiring hall. There's grievance procedures that includes wages, hours, working conditions, schedules, and whether work will take place on weekends, holidays, etc. There's dispute resolutions for quickly resolving any jurisdictional disputes between unions that might be under this PLA, and then a number of technical provisions regarding how the PLA is covered, enforcement of the PLA, etc. So these are the common negotiated terms. Targeted hiring, so this is really focusing on employing workers from a specific demographic group or groups of or communities. Local disadvantaged workers, so workers from local areas who may have faced barriers. Training programs and opportunities to develop skills through apprentice programs. Contracting with small or local or minority businesses. On-site labor, which would include the workforce that is at the project location. All of that would be negotiated, and the folks on site would be union labor. And then there's also negotiated off-site manufacturing, which would include union labor that's producing components at separate locations and transporting them to the site. So this would include steel fabrication, concrete and asphalt batch plant making, structural wood products, millwork, mechanical units, etc. One main point I wanted to make on this slide was that when negotiating a PLA, the timeline in general to negotiate these types of terms takes about 6 months to over a year. So the use and impacts of PLAs are heavily debated. There are, if you ask me, are PLAs good or bad? I would say it depends. It depends on the project. It depends on who you're asking. It depends on the type of project. So there's a lot of research out there that both positive and negative, supportive and not supportive. These are the potential positive and negative impacts of a PLA. So on the positive side, PLAs can bring labor stability. As mentioned, it prevents strikes, lockouts, and ensures continuous working conditions. It can help ensure steady supply of skilled labor, which enhance the quality and efficiency of work. And it provides standardized working conditions, so all workers on the job have to abide by all of the same conditions under a PLA. On the negative side, it can increase costs to projects because higher wages are usually required, and benefits of reduce competition, so it can limit the pool of eligible contractors and potentially dissuade non-union contractors to bid on a project. They can be administratively complex because it requires additional oversight and management. It can have a negative impact on non-union workers. So they may be disadvantaged because they have to pay into a union. They have to pay union dues and benefits that they may not receive. And then project delay. Negotiation takes, as I mentioned, 6 months to a year and may cause delay to a project. Okay, so now we're going to get into the specifics of the Heather Farm Aquatic and Community Center project. I'm going to call that the project because this is a very mouthful of a title for this project. This project will replace the Clark Swim and Community Center that was built in the 70s, and this project has been a priority for this council for a very long time. The adopted budget for this project is $77 million and is primarily funded by Measure O, which was a 10-year half-cent sales tax passed by the voters in 2022. Measure O will be funding this project, but it will also be funding a number of other services and programs aimed at improving the current and future quality of life for Walnut Creek residents. The project will also be funded by a partnership with the Walnut Creek Aquatics Foundation, who, through an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding with the city, agreed to fundraise $3 million and contribute that to the project. Like any major project, there is a project schedule, and it is tight. But just achieved a major milestone back in October when the City Council approved the design specifications for the project, and now moves into this next year of milestones that are before you on the screen that the project must meet in order to be complete by 2027. So as I mentioned, negotiating a PLA takes about 6 months to a year. So if the council directed staff to start negotiations, a PLA becomes a critical path aspect of the project schedule and we would need to have a completed, negotiated, and approved PLA by the City Council by March 2025. So now we're going to jump into potential impacts of a PLA on schedule and then budget of the project. So as I mentioned, PLA must be completed by March 2025. Why? If not completed, if the project is delayed, it puts at risk the Walnut Creek Aquatics Foundation's $3 million of fundraised funds. Because in that MOU that we agreed to, we said we would have a contract in place by the end of 2025, December 2025. So if we're delayed 6 months or to a year, that could put that at risk. On the cost side of things, if Council directed us to enter into a PLA, the major cost driver cost impact would be, on the labor side, would be off-site manufacturing, as I mentioned, which was anything that was occurring off-site on the project, so not on-site labor. Our project team estimates that if that's included in the PLA, there may be a $3 million impact to the project cost. In addition, if the project is delayed, there's a $200,000 per month cost for each month we're delayed. To a lesser extent, legal fees for negotiating costs would be included in the cost impacts as well. Something that would not necessarily impact the cost of the project would be on-site labor impacts. As I mentioned, prevailing wage is a norm for all public projects. It's a requirement, it's a state law. So any on-site labor, we would be paying prevailing wage anyway on this project. And so as prevailing wages are very similar to union wages, that wouldn't have a heavy impact on the project, cost-wise. Okay, so moving into options to consider. 3 options before you here, I'm gonna go through each one. So the first one would be no PLA on the project. This would be like a status quo option. We have not done a PLA in the past for major projects like this. So this is the status quo option, no PLA. The city would still pay prevailing wage for on-site labor on the project. And because of the size of this project, our project team is estimating that 90% of labor on this project would be union labor. This option would avoid any schedule delays or related cost increases related to off-site labor because there would be no PLA, or potential loss of funding from the Walnut Creek Aquatics Foundation because there would be no delay on the project. Now, option 2 would be no PLA, but an encouragement of union participation, local workforce, and a focus on labor compliance and enforcement through a pre-qualification process. So what does that all mean? So the city would continue to pay prevailing wage for on-site labor with this option and would encourage increased union participation beyond the expected 90 to 95% through an enhanced pre-qualification process, which means contractors would be evaluated through projects of similar size and scope, but also incentivized by being granted additional points for using union contractors and local contractors. There would also be enhanced labor compliance and auditing, which would include field interviews with trade workers and spot audits to ensure they're receiving proper wages and benefits. It would include notifying contractors any missing documents or corrective actions, verified payroll records, fringe benefit statements, apprenticeship documentation, and also monitoring site activities and reporting of noncompliance to the city. This option avoids any schedule delays, again, because there would be no PLA, so no off-site labor cost impact, and no potential loss of funding from the Walnut Creek Aquatics Foundation. And the third option here would be to negotiate and enter into a PLA with the Building Trades Council and Carpenters Union. We did meet with the Building Trades Council of Contra Costa County and the Carpenters Union and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers to understand their thoughts on a PLA. And what we understood was that the Carpenters Union and the Building Trades Council are now separate entities. So if you were to direct staff to enter into a PLA, we could potentially be negotiating a PLA with both the Building Trades Council and the Carpenters Union separately, which may impact the time it takes to complete the negotiation. So under this option, it does support union workforce on the project. However, opening negotiations with both entities could cause delays and lead to cost increases for the project, and then potential cost increases if off-site manufacturing is included. I think the benefit here is there would be 100% union participation in the project. That concludes my report. I am here to answer questions, as well as our Public Works Director, Rich Payne, and our John Hughes from Griffin Construction, our construction manager for the project.
Thank you. Pretty clear report. Anybody have any questions? Why are you looking at me like that?
I'll go first.
Good.
Thank you, Carla, for the report. If you can go back to the slide before with the options. So if I'm reading this right, kind of the way the staff is framing this, that all the options, option 3 has 100% likelihood of union labor, but even option 1 without a PLA has an estimated 90 to 95% union labor. So I'm imagining option 2 fits in the middle of those two.
Correct.
What is the 90 to 95% based on under option 1?
Based on the size of the project, and we're located in the Bay Area, I think our project team, their experience working on these types of major public works projects, say that most contractors that are getting these types of projects are union signatories. So they've signed on with unions to come on and have their workers participate on the project.
So the pool that we would be recruiting from for a project of this size would be contractors that have worked on other kind of major projects in the county, and that tends to rely on skilled union labor to do those types of projects?
Correct.
Okay. Then under option 2, you did a good job. You read off all the enhanced kind of labor compliance auditing and enforcement. Kind of in your experience or the consultant's experience, have those been beneficial and useful in trying to make sure? I'm told that cheating can occur when there's not that sort of enhanced kind of auditing and investigation. So I'm interested in knowing what that process kind of looks like.
I'm John Hughes with Griffin Structures. Sorry. My voice still sounds like I have a cold, but I assure you I don't. Yeah, so right now, it's state law requires that all public agencies pay prevailing wages, and it also requires that all contractors that bid on public projects register with the Department of Industrial Relations for all of their labor. And it's already state law that they have to submit all of their certified payroll to the state for this Department of Industrial Relations to audit. As you can imagine, that's a very voluminous amount of paperwork, and so you often hear from trade councils that there's things that slip through the cracks or could. So what we often do, and we see other cities do, is provide enhanced certified payroll labor auditing, where that same information is uploaded to a specialty consultant who goes through every pay app, makes sure that all the wages are correct, the fringe benefits are correct. They also produce or provide pre-construction meetings with the folks in the field so they know exactly what the wages should be. They're available for questions and answers. And then they will flag those issues for us as your construction manager to say, oh, we had a problem here and this needs to be rectified. And then it's our job to rectify that before the next pay app. Otherwise, that next pay app is withheld until it's resolved. Usually circumstances like that occur once or twice on a project, and it's usually clerical error that with no ill intent. But it is an extra enhanced level of certified payroll auditing that the city could employ to make sure that the prevailing wage requirements are enforced.
And in your experience, is that an effective means of doing auditing and ensuring that people are being
Yes.
paid what they're supposed to be paid?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And do you have an idea of kind of what the additional costs are associated with that?
About $200,000.
Okay. Those are all the questions I had for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and Carla, thanks. That was really clear, and I was able to follow along every step of the way, so thank you. So some of the questions I have, and I may have more afterwards as well, but let me know if these aren't something that staff can answer, and they would have to actually go to somebody that's more affiliated with labor in the union. How many of our surrounding cities participate in PLAs, do you know?
So the one thing I didn't mention, it's mentioned in the staff report briefly, most cities have community workforce agreements, which is a type of PLA, but it applies to more than one project. So what we covered tonight would just apply to Heather Farm, our project. Most cities have community workforce agreements, which essentially say any project over $1 million that's a construction project would be under a PLA. And so the PLA would cover, your CIP, your capital improvement budget, that kind of thing. I would say they're the most common type of PLA employed throughout our region and throughout Contra Costa County. So cities like Richmond, El Cerrito, Concord. I'm sorry, I had this list. I know the ones who don't have them, but yes. I would say they're including, I would say Hayward, San Leandro, a lot of cities that are a little bit out of our region as well, but they are more common than just one big project. That's more consistent.
Citywide, which may also involve private projects.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to offer just one clarification. Most cities that are using some form of a project labor agreement have the workforce agreements. However, the majority of cities do not have a PLA or a workforce agreement in place.
Okay. All right. Thank you. When we negotiate with the contract for this, it's essentially a number that whoever we go with agrees to meet that number, right? So what I'm trying to get to, if there's apprentices working on the job are probably paid less than somebody who's fully on the union, in the union, but that's not a concern of the city, right? There is a number, an agreed upon budget that the contractor agrees to with the city, right? So, and at that point, they're paying the union wages, and apprenticeships are going to be lower. This may be a question that's more for the union, but I just want to understand that we're negotiating a bulk number.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. I've heard that when there are union, when a PLA occurs and it's union workers, that it's local workers that work on the project. Is this something that we've understood in staff, or has this typically been the case that we've seen in examples?
Potentially, I think the definition of local is important. So it could be local to Walnut Creek, it could be local to our region, it could be local to Contra Costa County. I think how we define local when we negotiate the PLA will be very important.
Okay, okay. That was answered. Does a PLA necessarily have to extend to off-site manufacturing, off-site specialty work, or off-site subcontracted employees?
No, it's a negotiated item.
Okay. And does a PLA, let's take work stoppage out of it, but does a PLA help a project typically to come in on time when you're talking about skilled labor, ensuring a better likelihood that there aren't cost or cost or project overruns, that there's a better chance of it coming in on time versus it being delayed for one reason or another, not enough employees or not enough staff that can be working it?
I would say it depends, and I'm going to look over at John. Yeah.
So Carla's right, it does depend, and it really depends on the size of the project. So I think we would all agree that if you had union skilled labor on a project versus non-union unskilled labor, the union skilled labor are going to do better and they're going to be more on time. The key thing to understand here is that the majority of your contractors and subcontractors on this project are going to be union anyway, because you're raising your rates up to union wages already. So now there's a level playing field. And so in all likelihood, if you have a PLA on this project or you don't have a PLA, it probably would not have any substantive different issue one way or the other on the schedule. If anything, the entire industry is struggling with labor availability overall, union or non-union. And so in many ways, you want to create an environment where you're maximizing the maximum amount of labor participation possible, because the industry is already experiencing a significant labor shortage just macroeconomically.
So what you're saying is that if non-union labor was also included, it stands to reason that there are more employees, more potential staff that could be working on the project because they're not excluding them? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's sort of. What I'm saying is that a PLA requires everyone to sign the PLA. And if someone doesn't want to sign it, they won't bid.
Then they're out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The last question I have actually comes down to the negotiation itself of the PLA, which is obviously a big factor in the staff report on this, because that's the part that we're looking at potentially delaying the entire project and putting at risk millions of dollars that others have committed to if it's completed by the end of 2025, or at least the contract's completed by the end of 2025. So knowing that there's that kind of a compressed potential timeline, what could be done by both parties to ensure an expedited time to negotiate and agree to a PLA so that the needed start date doesn't get delayed? I mean, I would assume that this is as important to who we'd be negotiating with as it is to us, because they want to make sure that it's done. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 6 months. I'm hoping that there's a way in being able to expedite that.
There could be a way. However, I think if we're looking at our schedule, and I can go back to kind of our milestones that we're trying to reach here. So if council said, yes, go forth and negotiate this PLA, we would essentially have about 3 months to do that, given the holidays. So we'd start in January, and then we need to get to you all for a meeting to approve it in March. So it's really 3 months. I think if we were saying yes to the kind of general boilerplate terms that the Building Trades Council and the Carpenters Union wanted us to say yes to, and there was no negotiation or, hey, can we switch that? Or I think, sure, we could do that. Is that in the city's best interest? Probably not, because we would want to know what impacts those boilerplate items in the PLA would have on the project. And we would want to do some analysis and things like that. So 3 months is a very, very, very tight timeline, and it is unlikely we could meet it.
So what would happen theoretically if there was that negotiation and it didn't get met in 3 months? Would there be enough time to go through the contractor pre-qualification process with other non-union contractors?
No, we would have to have an approved PLA to be inserted into the pre-qualification process so that the contractors that want to be pre-qualified would understand what they're being qualified for. They would need to understand all the terms of the PLA. So we could not do it separately. We would have to finish by March.
And is it possible to then, would it be possible to say let's say by the end of March, we just felt we were too far apart? Could you then say, we're going to negotiate with other contractors, we're not going to be looking at a PLA then? Would there be enough time for that?
Effectively, you would be abandoning the PLA process, and you'd go back to what you were going to do anyway.
And there'd be enough time for that?
Yeah, right now the schedule shows us doing the pre-qualification. It's a 3-month process from April, May, and June, and then we turn right around and bid the job June, July, and August. So if negotiations broke down and you couldn't come to an agreement, you could just abandon that effort and go out and pre-qualify without the PLA.
Okay. Those are my questions for now. Thank you. Thank you.
So what are we doing if we were to take that route? It sounds like we can't work in January, February, and March. Is there work that can continue, or do we have to stop work while we figure out whether? And I'm going to ask the city manager this because
Yeah, there's a couple things here. So what's occurring right now is working on the construction documents. That's the focus. The council approved the design in October. That is just the design. Those designs need to be translated into construction documents so that then firms can bid on the work based on those documents. That is what is occurring between now and April. And as you can see on the schedule, April to June is when the pre-qualification would occur. What I think Councilmember Wilk was asking, is there basically a concurrent path that could be pursued, one that assumes no project labor agreement, and we are ready to go out and do the pre-qualification beginning in April while concurrently potentially negotiating a PLA and hoping we can pull off a miracle and have that done in 3 months. And so those are the two time frames that we're looking at, and the potential parallel path, having an option A and an option B of how do we proceed to stay on the April timeframe. And if a PLA agreement was not reached by April, the two options would be continue to negotiate and put the project at significant risk from a timing and cost perspective, or drop the PLA negotiations and proceed without.
and is that feasible to have a two-path process?
I suppose anything's feasible, but it adds complexity to the project.
I don't have any other questions.
Can I ask a follow-up question? If we have two parallel, does that mean we have to have extra staff dedicated to this, one going with the non-PAL and one going with the PAL? And does it then cost us money to not be able to stand up and make a choice?
Yes, it's certainly more work. I would ask, either John or Rich if you want to add to that. But effectively, we'd be, pursuing two paths, so there would be more work to pull that off. There might be additional costs associated with our project manager to work on both. There might be additional costs with our attorneys to draft both approaches, but I don't have a number for you of what that looks like. But presumably, there'd be additional work and additional costs to some extent.
Okay, a lot of good questions have already been asked, so I'm going to cross those off my list. But going back to the timing, my only experience with PLAs is on very large projects, and it's built into the timeline from the get-go. Do we have, I've talked to several officials in other jurisdictions and gotten different numbers from them. Do we have any real-life case studies where a city was working on a PLA, how long it took? Do we know any of those numbers, or is it just 6 months to a year?
It's about, I would say 6 months to a year is probably on the quicker side. I've heard as long as 5 years. I've heard as little as 6 months. So I think I would say 6 months to a year was kind of that middle ground that we were trying to reach of what could we do?
Okay. And then, so then focusing back in on the idea, we are doing pre-qualification for the contractors. And it sounds like there are measures that could be included there that will help achieve some of the goals of, helping develop the workforce, local hire, apprenticeships. How would that work if we, making eye contact there?
Yeah. So the pre-qualification process is based on the Department of Industrial Relations questionnaire that they publish, but it can be enhanced. It's editable at your discretion to include things like local hire incentives. You can add additional points for that. You can add additional points for if you're signatory to a union already. So there are, and then of course there's standard qualifications criteria for just, are you good at these kinds of projects? Have you succeeded in this way? Do you have the right financial wherewithal? So you do a broad-based analysis, both financial, safety, track record, personnel, resumes, but you can add to that certain criteria that says we're trying to incentivize local hire and we're trying to incentivize union participation by giving additional bonus points for those contractors.
And if we wanted to make sure that we were supporting the apprenticeship programs, because we've all talked about the shortage of skilled labor.
Right.
And it impacts so much from housing to this to that. Is that something you can deal with in that way in the pre-qualification process?
Yeah, and the apprenticeship program requirement is part of state law already. So you're already bound to have participation in apprenticeship programs that are not affiliated with the unions already. That's already part of the prevailing wage requirements, is to have apprenticeship programs.
Does that include, are there any standards on the apprenticeship programs? Do they have to be state recognized apprenticeship programs?
Yeah, there are. I don't know exactly the specifics of that, but I know that they have apprenticeship programs that are, certified or state endorsed programs that are part of the requirements, and that's part of that enhanced auditing service, is they can provide those resources and make sure that they're using the right apprenticeship programs to do that.
Okay. And then on the two other areas so I could understand this better. When it comes to the requirement that health care be provided to the workers, I hear that there are contractors who just give the employees the money and say, go buy your health care. And then there are employers that buy into the union health care, and that gets deducted from the paycheck and provided to the worker.
Right.
How does that difference work?
If you had a PLA in place, then all of the fringe benefits, the health care, all of that would go through the unions, and then they would effectively become members of the union for that duration of that project. There are certain fees that would be deducted from their paycheck that go towards the union, that if they decided not to stay in the union, they would not recover those. If it's a prevailing wage project, they're obligated to pay those wages, but the manner in which health care is provided is still left up to the employer. Whether they provide a plan or they just give them to them in cash, that's still open to interpretation on their end. They just have to guarantee that they pay them the proper fringe benefits and wages.
So if you're going under prevailing wage, you have to provide enough money for the employee to get the health care. It's just whether
It's- yeah.
you provide the health care as a deductible expense ahead of time, or you just give them the money.
I would be stretching my legal understanding to know exactly what's required on that level. I just know they have to pay them, and it's dictated by the federal government. It's called Davis-Bacon wage rates, and it's by region, so it's open and fully open to the public. Everybody knows what those rates are.
Okay.
And then that auditing service that does certified payroll, they go through on a fine-tooth comb to make sure that they do it. They also do field interviews. So you actually go and you interview the workers in the field. They're bilingual to make sure, because sometimes there's even accusations that employers will say they're paying them, but then you talk to the worker and they won't. So they'll actually do field interviews as well to make sure that they are in fact getting paid those wages.
How does that field interview I mean, I could see it being a little awkward if you're the employee out in the field
Yes.
and somebody comes up and, hey,
It's pretty common. I mean, on public works projects, prevailing wage, field interviews are a standard thing, so they're all used to it.
and then the information that comes out of that auditing, if it turns up, kickbacks or somebody that says, they say they're paying them, but they're not.
Right.
What are the remedies?
Usually the remedy, like I said earlier, is just to correct the error, and it's usually clerical in nature. If there's something egregious, you report them to the Department of Industrial Relations, and they can take action against them and fine them and penalize them. And the city can take action to not pay them until it's rectified. So there's a whole series of enforcement tools that, to ensure that contractors are paying their employees properly.
Do the unions ever play a role in double checking the work, or is it usually
Usually
just the
not.
city? It's usually just
No.
the city that looks at that. Let me finish going through, because I think I'm really close to being done. So, in your pre-qualification process, Kevin asked you about the standard well-trained employee. Do you think that pre-qualification process helps you get to? I've gone through state contracting that ended up with some pretty abysmal contractors. Do you feel confident in your pre-qualification process, of the ability to weed out, given the amount, we're not trying to go out to bid like in June for a project that's going to start in July. We're going out to bid a year ahead of time, and so we'll have a fairly robust pool of contractors.
That's a difficult question to answer, because the pre-qualification process is designed to maximize your bid pool, because the more bidders you have on a project, the more competitive your bids will be. So if you have 7 or 9 pre-qualified bidders, you're going to get better results numerically. On the other hand, if it's too wide, that means that you've maybe allowed some that aren't quite as qualified as others, and so it's a bit of an art more than a science. But that's why we use the state Department of Industrial Relations questionnaire, so there's a standardized point scale to it. Like I'd said earlier, there are always challenges on projects. This project will have a lot of challenges. There's going to be challenges with getting labor out there, regardless of a PLA or not. But the pre-qualification process is your best defense to mitigate those potential problems. So it's not necessarily a guarantee that you get a stellar, perfect contractor, but not doing it is almost a guarantee that you won't.
I have done that in the
Right.
past. I know what happens then.
Yeah.
In the pre-qualification process, are they required to have their suite of subs in the process?
Not necessarily. However, so the way the state has formulated the questionnaire, it's not required.
Okay.
And you don't want to include all of the subs, because now you're locked in. You want them to have a competitive element to their bidding process too. However, for your project, we might, and we haven't even gotten this far yet, but recommend pre-qualifying key subcontractors. The two that come to mind on pool projects are the pool contractor and the pool decking contractor. Those two things tend to be the things that have the biggest challenges throughout the project in terms of just long-lasting, capable, good contractors. So there is a way to pre-qualify the subs, but it's a give and take, because if you do only pre-qualify, say, 2 or 3 pool contractors, that means you only have 2 or 3 pool contractors that are going to bid your job, and their prices might be a little higher. So that's a little bit of a city decision about a cost-benefit analysis that we would.
And I could see, for some of the specialties like that, there might only be 2 or 3 really good ones.
That's true.
And that's where you are.
And that's why those 2 tend to fall in that category.
Okay. Are there any of the other specialties? Because we'll have solar, we'll have electrical, we'll have just the plumbing, we'll have.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend pre-qualifying. Maybe the contractor who does the work on the pond.
Yeah, the pond was the other one that I
yeah.
was like,
But we
Yeah.
haven't dove in that deep yet.
don't dive into that pond. It's not that clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good for now. Thank you.
So you left, don't, yes, I do, because the 2 of you were talking, and so the prevailing wage requirements in the state of California, and also the Bacon Davis?
Right, Davis-Bacon, yeah.
Bacon last, okay, I'll have to remember, eggs before bacon.
Davis.
Between the 2 of those, one is federal and one is state, they not only stipulate the amount of wages that would be paid for each category of labor
Yeah, foremen,
based on
apprentices.
based on a region.
Yes,
So the rates here would be different than the rates in Imperial County.
that's true.
Okay. Then but the other half of it is these 2 state and federal regulations would specify the level of health benefits that must be provided.
No, they don't
Okay.
specify what
All
kind
right.
of
So
care.
it's just-
No, it's a dollar amount.
It's a dollar amount.
Yeah.
And that's regionally calibrated as well, I would assume.
Yeah. So when and there's not a conflict between Davis-Bacon and state
They
prevailing
just
wage.
reflect each other.
The Davis-Bacon is the name of the rate sheet itself. And
Okay.
it's nationwide and it's region, but then the state takes that and applies it.
All right.
But if you were to look at it, it's like a spreadsheet. Journeyman plumber, base wage is $37.50. Fringe benefits is $2.07. And health benefits and contribution is $7, and it just spells it all out. And that's what you verify that they're actually getting. It doesn't necessarily
Are
say
the
you have
fringe
to have this
benefits,
kind
do
of
the
health.
fringe benefits and the health benefits differ depending on families, single?
Yeah, I don't think they make
No,
a
so we're-
distinction there.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
just make sure I clarified. Thank you.
And before you sit down, just to get a sense of the scale, kind of it's a contractor and then various different subs. I hadn't even kind of really drilled down till Mayor Pro Tem about, we might have a pond subcontractor. How many subcontractors do you envision, electrical, plumbing?
35 to 40 subcontractors on this job.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many employees total would you estimate?
Total like workers?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, hundreds.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, maybe over 1,000. I mean, that might be a little bit much, but there'll be a lot. I mean, on any given day when things are really happening, you could have 200 people out there working on a given day.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody want to cut me off again? All righty. I have you can sit down because you answer only really complicated questions. I actually want to know a little bit about the pressure we're under in terms of the status of where the community center is and the existing pool. What kind of timing pressure are we under in order to meet the community's expectations of having those facilities?
Good evening. My name is Rich Payne. I'm the Public Works Director. To answer your question, Mayor, the schedule is, we're still in the design stages of the project. We're hoping to have the first set of plans by the end of February, and so we're still doing okay in terms of timing with regard to that. We're working through some of the environmental constraints associated with obviously, there's a turtle out there that's creating some grief. And then along with that is we've turned in all of our applications to all the environmental groups. And so we're at sort of their mercy in terms of the timing. So we're waiting to hear back from them. So with regard to the constraints associated with the project, that's what we're dealing with at the moment.
What is the shape of the old stuff? How effective is it to do? How effective is the pool?
and
How
s-
much
and-
how much do we spend just trying to keep water in it?
Oh, in terms of the existing pool. Okay. I apologize. I misunderstood your question.
Oh, you answered a good question. I just
Great.
couldn't think of it.
So with regard to the existing pool, we're doing fine. We're able to maintain it in its current condition. It takes a little bit more work, and every day is, we're just keeping it together, and we should be fine based on the information that we have and based on the level of maintenance that we're providing. We're going to be okay with regard to our current schedule and where we're at.
So I'm hearing that this schedule is almost critical in terms of what we can afford, what we can deliver to our community.
Yes, as the schedule is right now. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know even to whom to ask this question. If there are cost runs that occur while the PLA is in effect, what happens? Do we have to eat them, or, you promised us you'd supply us with everything we need and you don't deliver?
Yes, it'll definitely impact the cost of the budget of the project.
And we'd be the payers?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have anything to add?
Go ahead. So that's a separate issue that's not before the council tonight, but there are different forms of contracts that you can enter into that address whether or not cost overruns can be charged to the city or not. There are different contract forms and different kinds of contracts, and there are forms of contracts out there where there's a guaranteed price now.
And the subject of competition for laborers has come up a couple of times. Can somebody give me some kind of quantitative, if it can be done, value between the ability of a PLA to supply just sheer numbers of people to get the job accomplished versus just going back the old-fashioned way where you don't have a PLA? You're all looking at me as they're used to my questions. They interpret them better.
Yeah, I'll ask John here to elaborate more detail. I think it's similar to what he mentioned earlier about wanting to have as many workers available and potential companies, qualified companies, to do the work is the goal given the tight labor market. But
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but,
It's
you have an advantage one choice over the other?
In many respects, you're going to end up in the same place either way. Without a PLA, and I can't promise this, but I can prudently speculate that you're going to end up with 90 to 95% union labor anyway. They're going to be getting their labor from the labor halls. That small 5% that's not union labor, it probably breaks down to one contractor that's just, happens to have that many people. The number of people available to do work, whether they're in the union halls or not, is limited. And so, our recommendation is that you try to do everything you can to maximize as much labor as possible. That's really the best analysis I can give you, because I can't say a union can for sure deliver more people than a non-union can. You're entering into an agreement and there's a certain level of trust, and there's not a whole lot of guarantee. I don't know. I mean, that would be kind of the terms of the agreement, but I'm not sure how much you can say they guarantee you that you'll get enough labor. They might have limits of their own. So we're getting into the realm of dealing with market forces that you can't necessarily predict specifically in that regard.
Thank you. I'm done with my questions. Any follow-up on anybody else? All right. Have we moved to public comment? We have moved to public comment, by definition. Does anybody wish to make a public comment? You have 2 minutes. Please tell us your name and your affiliation or your address.
My name is Bill Whitney. I'm representing the Contra Costa Building Trades. I was told I had 10 minutes. Is that correct? I'm the sole representative.
You are speaking as a group, yes,
Okay.
but nobody else in your group can speak.
Thank you very much. So again, my name is Bill Whitney. I'm the executive director for the Contra Costa Building and Construction Trades Council. I represent workers, working men and women, your friends and neighbors. That's who I represent. Many of them live in Walnut Creek. I think you would be shocked at how many union members live in Walnut Creek. We represent approximately 35,000 working men and women in Contra Costa County, of which 65% of those people are men and women of color and indigenous people. So I think we can kind of put to rest this concern that there's not enough workforce. We, day in and day out, week in, month, year in and year out, we're working on billion-dollar projects, not just, this is a huge project, this is an important project, but the point I'm making is that there's not been a single project in the close to decade I've been working at the building trades where we haven't been able to hit the workforce number and bring in everybody you need. Electricians, painters, plumbers, you name it, they're there. And they go to work and they're there and they're on time. So no labor shortage. Many tradesmen and women, as I said, live in Walnut Creek and the surrounding communities. And it's been my experience that workers that live locally, they spend locally. If you have non-union workers on here, and I'm pro-worker, I'd like to organize all of them, put them into the unions, frankly. But they're not living in Walnut Creek. The people that they go down and they get at Home Depot, they're not living here in Walnut Creek. They're not living in Contra Costa County. So where are they spending their money? Where they live. And they live over in Modesto, or they live in somewhere out in the far end of Napa or in Sonoma County or southern San Jose, in those areas. Nothing wrong with that, but they're not spending their dollars here. So you lose that multiplier impact by not having a PLA and not getting that money. And that lost economic impact equates to what I believe is long-term realized higher costs via underutilization of the true value of the sales tax funding source of this project, which comes from taxpayers. And our members are taxpayers. We're in this community and we're paying taxes. And so doesn't it seem fair and appropriate that all the local businesses would have the opportunity to benefit from the people that are going to buy their groceries, their gasoline, go to restaurants, bars, whatever it is they're doing in their lives, and do that? To the degree to say we don't want the PLA is a little bit of like to all the local mom and pop businesses. Why would we do that? Why not spend that money locally and then get those vibrations going and building that local economy? When you get with the PLA, the union hiring halls are the only source of the labor. That's the only source of the labor. And you get stable wages. To clarify on the prevailing wage, it's total package. So our wages are negotiated with our signatory contractors, and the total package we get, those are our wages. Now, we also choose to take money out of our wages and put it into our apprenticeship program, put it into our health care, put it into retirement and things of that nature. But that is what the prevailing wage in the state of California is based on. So there's one prevailing wage, and it's our wages. And so there is no other lower numbers that you can magically get to, period, in a discussion. When you go with union labor out of hiring halls, then what you're doing is you're expanding. This project is a golden opportunity to create jobs for young men and women in your community through the apprenticeship program. You build things. Those things are going to need journey-level people and field leadership, but they're also going to need apprentices, and those apprentices can come from areas in and around here. Non-union doesn't really have any apprenticeship program to speak of. Their apprenticeship program graduates maybe 3% of the apprenticeships in the entire state, and they don't even represent all the crafts. So the apprenticeship program, you're helping your community and putting people to work. Again, it's a slap in the face to not support that. Safety. Look at where your safety claims are. I got to tell you something. You're concerned about your timeline? Have a death on your job site, have a serious accident on your job site, and Cal OSHA and OSHA will be in here and bury you in a sea of paper, and your project will go off the grid. And that's where, from day one, when we step into an apprenticeship program, the first thing we get, PPE, we're getting our steel-toed boots, we're learning CPR, protective goggles, vests, hard hats. The whole Megillah is come from our training that we have. In addition to that, you get, in addition to the local hire, which we've already talked about, you have the helmets, the hard hats, which is a huge benefit for veterans and brings those into the community. The PLA, just for clarification, covers on-site work. So there is no off-site. We're not doing prefab beams or any of that sort of stuff. That's silly. Look at maintenance costs. You're talking about building this. Does anybody go into a surgical clinic and say, hey, I need brain surgery and I want your least experienced brain surgeon? Nobody says that. They want the best. Why wouldn't you want your best labor in here? Because your maintenance costs are going to go through the roof, and they will. It's just the way it is. You can't get blood out of a turnip. So the best skilled and trained people come from the apprenticeship programs of the best skilled and trained crafts in the world. And they're right here in your backyard. Why wouldn't you use them? It's a little misleading to say PLAs take a long time to negotiate. Just for the record, when I negotiated, and I do all the negotiation, you're talking to a guy right here, for the last close to a decade. The last PLA we did, City of Hercules, one meeting. We had one meeting. Dan, we had one meeting. It was a good meeting too. And we got it all squared away, one meeting. These are not, our PLAs are like 18, 19 pages. They've been vetted 7 ways to Sundays for close to 30, 40 years now. So there's nothing complex in there. There's no extra staff time. I mean, you've got an excellent legal staff. Trust me. The first thing I do is I get on the horn and I call Concord or I call somebody else and I say, hey, what about your bid documents and your PLA, your contract documents? Takes about 1 day to get it done. Then you're done. There are no other extra costs. There's no other extra staff. Piece of cake. Public works projects, they're all equal. Union, non-union, whether you're doing mobilization, demobilization, hammers, supplies, legal, bonding, they're all the same. Even the labor's the same. So the idea that this raises costs, it's silly. It doesn't raise costs. Now, you can do all the studies you want, and I've looked at some of the studies that the staff has done. What does New Jersey and Connecticut have to do with us? You've got right over here, UC Berkeley Labor, their staff called them and asked them about what was going on. They're the most knowledgeable people maybe in the world about this, and in both of the UC Berkeley's studies, it says no cost increases. So, you got to pick and choose where you're, getting your sources. Just let me read a quick list here. Contra Costa County, Contra Costa Community College University, BART, Contra Costa Water District, Contra Costa County Office of Education, El Cerrito, Richmond, Pinole, Hercules, Martinez, Concord, Pittsburgh, Antioch, West Contra Costa Unified School District, John Sweat, Mont Diablo Unified School District, Martinez Unified, Pittsburgh, Antioch, Delta Diablo Sanitation, West Contra Costa Wastewater District, all have PLAs. They haven't sunk into the 7th layer of hell. They're not stupid people. And these PLAs are working. We're building good projects, and we're making that work for them, and they can fire us like that. They could end that PLA. In the close to 30 years that we've had PLAs in this county, not one entity has come to us and said, we've had it with a PLA. We can't take it anymore. Not one. So we would encourage you to take a look at that. Contra Costa Transit Authority, by the way, just got, for the Highway 680 innovative project, they got a huge amount of money. We're the ones that made the call to the Department of Transportation. And we're the ones that got that squared away. And you can talk to Tim Hale if you don't believe that. So, you know, what we're doing is we're making and helping projects be successful and work here. I would encourage you to also, don't count on this myth about smaller bidders. You're going to get quality bidders. You'll get plenty of bidders on this project, and it'll work. I'm asking you to stand with workers and support working men and women. And I really, truly appreciate the time you gave me here to speak tonight. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, wait a minute. Sir?
Bill.
There might be a follow-up question, so
I just had a couple quick follow-up questions.
Sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. In the list of studies, I know the Berkeley Labor Center has found that their 2 studies say there is none, but the RAND study down in LA said that.
Yeah, that is like an apples and orange comparison. That's on housing, which is an entirely different beast, and it's like a public-private kind of hybrid. And so I'm not going to apologize for paying hardworking men and women wages that they can live on. So if they're working on projects down there, and I'm not familiar with that particular bond measure, but if that's a requirement for a PLA, then, you know, right on, God bless America. And so they're paying them maybe living wages. So, but it's a different comparison. We're talking about a city project.
So you're
It's
saying
not
the
housing.
cost increase that they saw, that the RAND folks.
Could
'cause
be a
it-
combination of housing.
Reading the study, it sounded like it was a combination of people, how they, the requirement in the PLA that a project be a certain size before it applied, all the projects came in below that at a smaller size.
That study also seemed to me to be kind of like a snapshot in time. It wasn't looking at the full breadth of the project. There were pieces that I think that they missed in that study. But I could give to staff, and I'd be happy to do that. I could send you 24 studies from our toolkit that would show that PLAs don't cost more and better efficiency, blah.
Okay, and then the other question, project labor agreements. You said Hercules, 1 meeting.
Say again?
You said Hercules, you had 1 meeting. How long did it take you on Hercules to go from beginning to end on a signed PLA?
I would say we went in, staff was given clear instructions. And so I don't know, I'm not accusing staff of playing games, but when they get clear instructions, then they know where to go. And having been a former city council member, I get that. They have to understand what it is you want them to do. But if you give them clear instructions and you tell them, hey, by middle of December, we want this PLA back, I can promise you that we could do this in a meeting, 2 meetings, with just having that to put together. But it was
How long did Hercules take?
Hercules took after we got the lunch meeting we had. So I would say that from the lunch meeting, probably 20 days, 30 days, maybe. I'm just saying because of the meetings and how the meetings fell. We went to the meeting and we got a favorable vote, and so we have a citywide PLA.
What about like the Concord PLA? That's
Concord
community.
was actually before my time, so I don't know. I would say that is it all always 1 meeting? God, that'd be awesome. But no, it's not. But we understand the timelines here. We're not here to penalize the city or put the city in harm's way. We're not going to do that. And as again, it's mostly boilerplate print stuff. And because this would be a project-specific PLA, you don't have, a citywide PLA is covering a broader scope of
No, I know.
subjects and
I
that sort of stuff.
recognize.
So it's a simpler PLA to negotiate time-wise.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
Yeah, what was the Hercules? Is it a citywide?
It's a citywide PLA, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Quick question, thank you. The question I had asked our staff was any off-site specialty work or any off-site subcontractors, do those have to be part of a PLA? And the response was that that's all part of negotiation. What is your understanding of that?
The RPLA covers, we have a scope of work, what the project is, just define the project, which is what's up there on the screen, this project out ahead of the farms. There is no, for, bringing pumps or bringing in manufactured beams, structural beams, none of that is part of the PLA. The only thing that is, there's something called fabrication. The only thing that would be covered in the PLA, and it's in all the PLAs, and it's for two crafts, for the United Association, the UA, which is the plumbers. Let's say they're the pipe people. So you put the pipe racks together if you've got a structure that has pipes. And so it actually saves you time and money because it's built locally. And then they bring it over. And so you have crews that know how to do fabrication in their factory. And then they lift it up in place, bolt it in, and away it goes. It's the same thing with, say, sheet metal. You peel these ceiling tiles back, and you're going to find ducting up there. So they could take all this ducting, and they come in on flatbeds, and they just boom, 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 put it in place, connect it, done. So, so those are the only things that are off-site. That otherwise, everything else is on the site, within the fence line. Let's call it the fence line. Whatever the fence line of your project is, that's what it's going to be. And I don't know how much fab work you'd have. I don't know. I haven't looked at the piping. I haven't looked at the structures. I'm sure there'll be some ducting in there, but it's not going to cost you money. This type of off-site work, fabrication, that's not going to cost you money. That's going to save you money and time, because it'll take the time to, if you can imagine how each run of pipe that you had to get in there, measure it, then bring it back down, cut it, put it back up. That's all done. They do it at the fab shop, and they just lift it up into racks, set it into place. It's done. Okay. Does that answer your counsel?
Yes,
Okay.
It does. Thank you.
All righty.
I think you can go now.
Thank you.
Mayor, members of the council, Bob Lynchai for the Chamber of Commerce. Our engagement in this project of the Aquatic Center and Community Center began in 2021 with the Your Parks, Your Future. We attended a number of different convenings and participated in some side meetings with Mr. Buckshire and Safine to understand deeply how this project would affect the community before the election. And we did a number of surveys in collaboration with the city and discovered how important this project was to the community. And we know for a fact that the ballot measure passed largely because police protection enhancements were included. That doesn't mean it wasn't important to the citizens that the pool and community center be built. It just meant that it put us over the top. And as a result of that, we know that the budget is tight. The $77 million that has been identified, frankly, is a tight budget. You're required, because you're our city, to pay prevailing wage on these projects. So you check that off the list. Just last month, our board had a lively discussion on this agenda topic. And to a person, we believe that a PLA will jeopardize the time and the budget for this project, and that to enter that direction would put the project in jeopardy, in our view, largely because of the delays that we believe it would affect. And so we favor option number one, no PLA. We believe that the cost estimate for staff administration, which is not necessarily a factor but is called out, is real. And while it's imperative that this project be on time and on budget, we believe option one is the best. Thanks for the time.
Before you disappear, let me check with the council and see if we have some questions. Do we have some questions?
Just one. Have you looked at option two and the issues around apprenticeship programs and local hire? Has the chamber dove into that at all?
depends on what you mean by local.
Yeah.
As the staff has mentioned,
Local can be,
yeah, I think that the more you open it up for opportunity for the biggest subset of labor to participate, the better. So,
what about the
local-
apprenticeship programs?
you know, every career, every business is having difficulty with talent. In fact, talent and workforce will be a key component of our strategic plan this next year. We have looked at it a number of different fronts, particularly hospitality and healthcare. The apprentice programs are great programs, but we haven't investigated deeply on
Okay.
on that issue.
Thanks. I just figured I'd.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Thanks, Bob.
All right, thanks.
Good evening. My name is Ramon Amaral. I'm a representative for the North Cal Carpenters Union, Local 152, representing 4,000 members here in Contra Costa County. I'm here today to express our support for Option 2. This option provides a fair and inclusive framework that ensures that all bidders have the opportunity to bid under the same set of standards with existing requirements, the payment of prevailing wage, the use of a state-certified apprenticeship, and the health care provision that includes the worker and the family. The compliance component will further ensure that the contractors are held accountable for these requirement standards. However, if the council decides to move forward with Option 3, we are prepared to support that direction as well, provided that the North Cal Carpenters Union is included in all aspects of the negotiation process. And making this a tripartite agreement, early collaborations will allow us to ensure that the needs of our contractors and members are taken into consideration. I am certain that we can work together effectively and achieve the city's goal in a timely manner. Regarding the city concern about increased costs, prevailing wage is union wage. Prevailing wage projects are absolutely higher than non-union wages, because there is no minimum requirement on non-union projects, making the labor market a race to the bottom. So because this project requires prevailing wage, whether union or non-union, contractors win the bid, the same wages would apply regardless. The concern reduces competition can only be attributed to how unscrupulous contractors would be reluctant to bid under these oversights. We value the opportunity to partner with the City of Walnut Creek to promote quality, fairness, mutual success in all building projects. Again, I urge you to consider Option 2 preferably, but would also favor Option 3. Thank you. Any questions?
Oh, yes.
Can you just elaborate again on why 2 versus 3? I know you'd be happy with 3 too, but why you started with 2 and ended with 2, so.
We feel with Option 2, the concerns of allowing a broader aspect of bidders, correct? As long as there's a set standard that they have to abide by, that's the reason why we are pushing more of Option 2, but, you know, don't really have anything against Option 3 as long as we're considered in all negotiations. Just, you know, stating the fact that the carpenters are its own entity besides the building trades.
And under the kind of a potential PLA scenario with the carpenters, can you speak to any off-site labor issues that might arise there?
Mainly it would be what's considered craft, you know, the obligations of that certain craft. But besides that, I think that would be the main focus on what craft covers what work on any given project.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but then is it most of your work is within the fence, as Mr. Whitney said, not outside the fence?
That's correct.
Okay. And then in terms of timing, what has your experience been in terms of negotiating PLAs?
My personal experience, I don't really have it in the sense of negotiation, but I do have, a team member here that might be more expert in the sense of a timeline.
It's okay. I mean, is the 6 to 12 months that staff had said, does that sound about right, consistent with your experience?
Well, to my knowledge, everything is feasible, but each project is going to vary. But, I don't see it going excessively long. So it's in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I think you can go.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Rick Solis. I'm a senior field representative with NorCal Carpenters Local 152 in Contra Costa County. I didn't intend on speaking tonight, had my colleagues say everything, but there were a few comments that were made that were, I think, untrue. Can't think of a better word. And I'm not saying this to disparage anybody that was saying it, but I do want to address them because when I heard them, I just, raised an eyebrow. So regarding worker shortages, that is something that is prevalent in the non-union industry because I can speak with the carpenters union. I have people, I would say a minimum of 5 people coming through my door every day begging to join the union, and we have no place to put them. So by having projects like this, we're creating the opportunity for these people to enter into the construction industry, and not just doing construction, but doing it right, where they actually can work with dignity, getting a retirement program, health and welfare for themselves as well as their families. But I mean, we have people, I mean, almost unlimited. And I worked in Santa Clara County for, I think, since 2009 through 2021, and we had the largest project probably in the state of California with the Apple campus, probably 5,000 workers on that job site, and not once did we ever have the need to bring somebody. But real quick, I'm losing time. Regardless if it's pre-qualification or PLAs, they do not raise the wages. That's what prevailing wage is. Union wage is prevailing wage. Pointing out cheaters to the DIR when it comes to the cities doing the enforcement, it's not effective. And the statement that was made where the unions don't make a difference when it comes to compliance, we absolutely make a difference. We have compliance departments that speak directly with that scope, where we get money for workers, both union and non-union, because we don't just represent, if you allow me to keep going, we don't just represent union workers, we represent non-union workers as well, and help them get the prevailing wages that are due to them. So especially under a Trump administration where labor standards are going to be really kind of watered down, and he's going to put a DIR director.
But we probably shouldn't travel down that path.
Okay. So again, regarding the enforcement of labor compliance, we absolutely have, again, I could speak for the carpenters. We have a compliance department that works on this on a daily basis, that visits workers on the job site, and actually visits them at home because they're afraid to talk on the job site.
Thank you.
Okay.
Unless I have a question, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm gonna
no
have
problem.
to cut you off.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask if it's okay for me to speak on behalf of Sheet Metal Workers, Local 104, not the building trades. It is related to, my name's Eric Haynes. I'm a business representative with Sheet Metal Workers.
Oh, okay. I'm not an expert in who belongs to what and what activity, PLAs versus non-PLAs. We sorted out. Now, we had somebody who spoke for the PLAs and took the 10 minutes. I'm going to consult with some people and see if you can speak. So make yourself at home, please, for a minute.
Sure, thank you.
Is your organization part of the Building Trades Organization?
Yes, we are affiliated.
Okay, then you've had your time. Sorry, thank you. Are there any other people who, I don't see anybody anybody left to speak, so I'm going to bring it back to council. And is there a council member who would like to make some comments or ask additional questions of staff?
I had a question for staff. So Mr., and it may be for John, but the off-site labor, and I know that we haven't prepared the construction drawings yet, so, but kind of in terms of the scope of the project, did it sound consistent with the off-site labor being mostly focused on that pipe work and sheet metal work, or do you envision that there could be other things outside the fence?
I don't want to negotiate on behalf of one party or another, but most PLAs that we've seen include concrete batch plant manufacturers as well as asphalt batch plants. So, and then the term fabrication could really apply to anything that's fabricated. So that could be millwork, that could be glazing, storefront windows. It's hard to say. The key thing is that what, in many regards, much of what we heard here about prevailing wages and union wages being the same, we all agree on that. That is true. And if the city chooses to engage in dialogue or negotiation for a PLA, the only time we've seen significant cost increases is when they start to impact fabrication that occurs off-site.
Okay.
And that could then impact how long it takes to come to a deal.
So it's a negotiated item. It could be broader than just a couple of items.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Solis mentioned kind of the auditing and was, I think it's fair to say, was somewhat critical or suspicious that kind of an additional layer from the city would be effective. I know you spoke to that, and I think we've gotten a good briefing on kind of what would be entailed with that. It'd be above and beyond what the state would do. Now, if a union contractor were hired to do the work, then I thought I heard that they would also have kind of their
That's true, and I don't dispute that
auditing.
at all. What I meant to say was that the unions don't enforce prevailing wages on non-unions, and maybe they do. I don't know. Okay. What I was really saying was that if you did not enter into a PLA, the city would not be relying on the unions to then enforce prevailing wages.
I see.
That was my main point. Mm-hmm. Now, I do believe that in this project, most of your contractors will be union, and the unions will be very engaged in enforcing their collective bargaining agreements, which is good for everybody. And so, in many respects, you're going to get a higher level of quality because you're going to get more union participation anyway. It's just a matter of, do you want to engage in a PLA to take that further?
Okay, thank you. Those were all my questions.
Anyone else? Yes.
So thank you for the staff report. And there one page in the staff report that had 5 sample studies. Where did those come from? And my read of just a basic description of a study that's related to an LA County bond measure, the only people that can go out for bond measures are public agencies, and therefore it sounds like prevailing wage to me, which is what affordable housing is all about as well. But maybe I'm wrong. So there's a hint of 2 questions in there. Maybe there's 3 or 4. See what you can do with it.
So I believe there's 6. Am I getting that count wrong? There's 6 studies that are referenced in the staff report. And why we reference these is to showcase the academic nature of studies that have been done on a topic that is very dynamic in people thinking that PLAs are great or PLAs are terrible or somewhere in the middle. So we wanted to give you some academic studies that also show that there is some place in the middle. So out of the 6 studies, there are 4 that say PLAs have increased costs. Again, these studies are not comparable to each other. They are just studies. And then 2 say that there are no impact on costs. So the point of this was to show that it's very difficult to find a real world setting where you can compare apples to apples between PLA projects and non-PLA projects, because there's so many different variables in a project that we've heard tonight. Even on this project, there will be lots of different variables. So it's really hard to say a PLA is positive or a PLA is negative. It really comes down to how does it apply to your specific project or your group of projects. So that's why this was included.
Okay. So John. Yes. Could you come back up, please? Mike, Tom, Scott.
Listen.
Answer.
John.
Let's go back again to the primer on California and prevailing wage law. It's more than just wages. I want to make sure I understand. It also applies to, if it's a prevailing wage project, which it will be.
It will be.
Then it applies to all labor, direct labor on the construction site.
That's correct.
And it's not only the wages, but fringe benefits, health care. Am I missing anything?
That's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Then in order to get
They
to.
mirror the union wage scale
Okay.
almost identically.
So the issue is to go to option 2, we get the additional aspect related to the to the apprenticeships, or wait a minute, there's some reference in my notes that there are apprentice requirements.
That's part of the prevailing wage requirements also, so you're already bound by that. Now, I concede that probably the unions have a better apprenticeship program than what they might get outside, but there is the requirement that it's part of prevailing wage requirements without a PLA. The option 2 that you might be referring to is that you can employ an enhanced auditing certified
Okay, so that's
payroll.
the extra for the enhanced auditing.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Unless there is an absolute burning question, can we start some discussion about pluses and minuses and what we're starting to understand about the choices before us?
Can I ask a question? Are we looking for a vote that's going to be happening, or just general direction and staff would take that direction?
Well, it's two things. This item is an informational update. Back this summer, your council asked that we provide information about project labor agreements, so that's what this is. Your council does not have to take any action this evening. You could receive and file this report, and that would be the end of the discussion. If your council wants to provide direction, I would want a vote and not just general direction.
And if we don't take action, what is the default?
The default would be to do business as this city has in the past, which is not to use a PLA.
I'm looking for somebody who's got courage and can start.
I'll go ahead and start. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
So I appreciate everyone coming tonight. As usual, this process has been a PhD in municipal governance, and now I can include project labor agreements to the tally. I appreciate the staff looking into this as we directed. I think we've got kind of a full vetting of the issues and the factors, and I appreciate Carla and John for both, and Rich and the whole staff for kind of teaming up on that. Just stepping back, this is going to be one of the biggest projects all of us will likely be involved with during our term on council. And so I think there is a strong desire, at least on my part, and I think all of our parts, to do it right, to do it on time, to do it on budget. And I do think that a key component of that is having a skilled and trained workforce involved in the construction activities, the in-the-fence activities. And so that's something that I think is important as we're moving forward. I understand the different options, and we could take no action, in which case option 1 would be the default. I'm more intrigued and interested in option 2 because I think it increases the likelihood of union labor being involved on the project and getting the project done right and on time and on budget, and it doesn't have the negative impacts to our construction schedules and costs that we were concerned about. But I'm also very interested in the city auditing process because I think that there's not really a reason to do prevailing wage if someone can cheat and not really pay prevailing wage. So I think by going option 2, we increase the likelihood that there will be union labor involved. That means, and also we'll be doing our own auditing, and if it's a union shop doing the work, they'll be doing their auditing. So there'll be plenty of auditing being done, and I think it would result in a better project. I'm also very sensitive to the chamber's concerns, and what I'd heard, and I'd heard from members of the chamber, concern about kind of the precedent factor of a PLA. I think that's somewhat mitigated by the fact that this is a public project. It's not a private project. I don't think we're not having a discussion about requiring a PLA on any private project. And so I'm seeing a benefit from going option 2 versus just the standard default option 1. And that's kind of, I'm interested to hear what my colleagues have to say, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Next volunteer, please.
I'll volunteer. So when we decided that we wanted to have this report come back to us, I said the most important things to me are maintaining the schedule, maintaining the budget, and getting the best deliverable possible, the best value for our money for the community, getting a facility that will last long term. And then we as the council have other goals of, making sure our community has the workforce it needs and things like that. The schedule part of this is the thing that gives me the most pause about doing a project labor agreement. The involvement I've had in other projects in other places didn't have this kind of time pressure. It was something that was, already dealt with. But I am skeptical as to whether or not a 20-page agreement could actually be ready to come back to us in March. And so I'm reluctant to start down that road right now because I know how long a 20-page agreement. It sounds simple until you get into it, and that I am reluctant to tie our hands on the schedule because whatever efficiencies you get down the line, we run the risk of time delays, and time is money on a construction project, and we run the risk of losing the match from the Aquatics Foundation. But I am interested in the budget and the deliverables part of things. I have seen construction projects that have gone exceptionally well, and I have seen projects that have gone exceptionally bad. And I want to make sure that we have the best labor force here working on the project, and everybody working together as a team on the project. And so I am leaning towards option 2. And I also want to make sure that we're building the workforce. So I am interested in looking at making sure that we have state certified apprenticeship programs as part of this, kind of long-term helping build the capacity within our area. So that's the direction I'm going right now. I'd be interested in hearing what others are thinking.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the people that came out and spoke here, and we heard from a few speakers and had 3 different opinions, which goes along with these kind of projects, I guess. So I have a little different take on this, but I want to look at it from a big picture point of view. From what it looks like, the reasons to not do a PLA come down to price. May cost more, to be determined if it would cost more, and it might take a little bit longer to negotiate than just saying we're not going to do a PLA, which means it may cost more. So it comes down to dollars. And obviously, again, we've heard the different options presented by staff, and I appreciate that because it really compartmentalized what it is that we're looking at. But the reasons to have a PLA, I still think, are very positive. There's, first of all, skilled labor guaranteed, and I get the option 2 has 90 to 95% that would be skilled labor. But I like the fact that there's a local workforce who live locally and spend their money locally, and it goes back into our local economy. One of the things that we've talked about as our priorities is helping to improve the jobs housing imbalance, and a PLA meets that. We are getting the local jobs. The project could come in quicker. We didn't even really talk about that. I asked a question about it, but again, it's hard to tell theoretically. But the project could come in quicker with using a PLA and guaranteeing skilled labor and thereby actually saving costs. So there's a possibility for that. And a project like this, as we heard from Mayor Pro Tem Darling as well, it can help with apprentices and help create more construction jobs that can be used for affordable housing, commercial projects, and other needs that we have locally and statewide. We hear about this labor shortage, and it sounds like, in the meetings that I've had before, it sounds like with a PLA and in ensuring skilled labor that we are building that labor force pipeline and that there isn't going to be the labor shortage. It sounds like if this, even on an option 2, it sounds like there would be enough labor for this. So I think that's a very positive approach. I do appreciate what the chamber said on this and hearing from the board on this, but I think that we want to make sure certainly that we have enough labor so that there's not any delays that happen due to essentially just an unforced error on this. And we've heard of other projects that have been on hold or haven't even started because there have been labor shortages. I mean, not with the city specifically, but other just private projects. So I want to make sure that that doesn't end up happening. One of the questions that was asked, I think I might have asked it, was if we're negotiating it in the first 3 months, January through March, and we don't get a PLA, we still do have the time to still negotiate and put out to bid and work on that without the PLA. We heard from the city manager that it would be a little bit more complex, but it could be done on essentially a parallel track. To me, it just seems like there's little downside into at least exploring that opportunity. We could potentially get it, and maybe we're able to get it done within a month or 2, and if we do, fantastic. And if we're concerned that we're not going to meet it within 3 months, then we're able to go to an option 2 at that point. I don't see the downside in at least starting the ball rolling on that. And one of the things I do want to talk about when we're looking at the larger picture is various times over the course of the last 10 years, I would say, I've had discussions with people in academics as well as people in the trades that we need to have a recognized and reputable alternative advanced degree aside from an academic path, but also a trade path. And that track is usually identified as a trade track. And a PLA helps to ensure that there's that type of alternative to an academic post-high school path. I think a PLA helps that by employing skilled labor. We could be part of something bigger, and in helping that kind of a path be more understood and accepted in the larger part. I think that's important. I think we're in an era right now where people are looking for options other than an academic path post-high school, and this is a way of helping to ensure that that continues. This project is going to be part of Walnut Creek for the next 50 years plus, just as the current swim center and community center has been for well over, I'm looking around the room here, well over half our lives. It's going to be that for the next 50, 60 years. So let's do this right. Let's help our local workforce. The rising tide lifts all ships in this. And so while I see the benefits of an option 2, and certainly, you know, if it were just between option 1 and 2, I'd say option 2. But I think the option 3 and moving toward a PLA, I think that does a good service for the city and the region and our local workforce. And I would like to see us at least enter in those negotiations with the building and trade and with the carpenters union.
Thank you very much. Thank you to staff for the work. This was 6 months worth of work So it's not like we're at the starting gate. I think there is enough information here to be able to make a decision. This is a really, truly complex project. This is the biggest project the city has ever done. And this is incredibly complex because of the challenges of building on top where an existing facility, multiple facilities exist. This is not, we will not know, the same way that happened with Larkey Pool renovation and the building of the All Abilities Playground. They were built in the same places that those facilities currently exist, and we don't know what the project really will be until you open up the ground, you take it out, and you go, oops, there's more under here than we knew about. So the project still has this great unknown existing there. And I also think that negotiating for a large project like this, with all due respect for whatever Hercules did, that was one meeting in 30 days. I don't think that's feasible. I think 6 months is the minimum. I think a year is more complex. And I think this is more complex because, let's see, tripartite. We're not negotiating with one entity, we're negotiating with two. So I beg to differ with that. And we've had negotiations with Toyota Walnut Creek that once we had the terms on the table, it still took months to get the language to agreement. And this is language that's going to have to be in place to cover 35 to 40 contractors and 1,000 or more workers. So it's going to be negotiated to the nth degree. What I see as the goals in this whole project, I have to step back and say the goal is not about to debate workforce standards here. This goal is to deliver what the community has given us money to do. And it's more than build a pool and a community center. It is also to take some of these funds and deliver better public safety services, better homelessness services, better sustainability infrastructure, economic recovery and economic development support, library hours, senior services, youth services. A plethora of things are supposed to be paid for with this money, and this is the bucket of money that has to do this entire project, sans some money that was already set aside, but also do these other things. And if these funds, if we go from $77 to $78 million, we're going to have to find $1 million from something else, and it's not in the general fund. If we go from 78 to 80 million, 78 to 84 million, by the way, the bids haven't come in yet. And did you notice tonight, two of our items on the consent calendar, one of which was related to the Boundary Oak Golf Course driving range, there have been cost increases over time to execute on the program that we planned. To do improvements to the leisure center. Opening up the walls, they discovered 4 extra HVAC systems or componentry that had to be updated as well. Every time we get into these projects, there are, oh, by the ways, when we're in there. So to hold to 77 million and not even have this conversation tonight is going to be a stretch. And we don't know what's going to happen if the economy, the last time we had a project come in on time and under budget was in the Great Recession when we opened the bids, and because no one had work in 2008 and 2009, the bids came in $5 million less. That is not going to happen here based on what's going on. So I think it's imperative that we adhere to the schedule that we have here. And negotiating a PLA will not allow us to adhere to it. I think it's a promise that will not be kept because there is no benefit to go fast for anybody unless we're willing to take it and accept all the terms they want us to take. I think so. Schedule is critical, and we have been told repeatedly $200,000 a month per increase in costs per delay in schedule. That's not accounted for here, and it's not accounted for in the studies that we looked at. That's the additional, those studies don't have that in it. I think it's really important that, I've said we stick to the budget. It also means our budget includes that our partner, the Aquatics Foundation, is able to give us the $3 million. If we lose the $3 million, that's a hole in the revenue side, it's no longer there. The unknowns in the project I've meant, inflation and where it might go, delays, and the fact that we have to negotiate with two stakeholders in this deal. And I think I don't want to turn us being turned to the community and say, well, we needed to do this, and therefore we can't keep library hours, or we cannot address the sustainability issues the way we'd hope, or homelessness services. So while my inclination would be to say, don't do it at all, but I understand the value that can come with option 2, and I can support option 2.
This is not my strong suit. This whole issue is, I don't even know how to explain a lot of the concerns I have. I think that we have the ability, I'm going to just chicken out. I tend to support what Councilmember Silva said. I tend to support other concerns. A lot of the people who are coming out of the union halls, if they don't have this PLA, they're going to find a job here, and we're going to have a good job. And I'm not sure that that means that I didn't think to even ask the question. If it's a member of your community and you don't get the PLA, are they blocked from working from us? I don't think that is the case. I think they need jobs, and I think the jobs will be here, and they will be good jobs, and they will be paying. The whole thing about the wages being equal was the only thing that I understood when I walked in the room to start with. So it made no sense to me to base a decision on that. I knew prevailing wage was what we paid. So I'm going to say that I would like to get this resolved as quickly as we can so that we can get on to the job of building. I am going to say that. I am going to say that I heard at least two of the other councils agreeing that item 2 is the one that we can support, and therefore I am going to throw my support in the second choice, and I will ask if anybody wants to make the motion, and if they don't want to make the motion, I will make the motion. Okay, I move that we choose item number 2 as our approach and proceed accordingly.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. And that, I believe, ends this evening's entertainment, and therefore this meeting is adjourned.